immigrated here from Mexico in the mid-'80s. And there was a big rush of immigrants coming from Mexico and Central America for work. I don't know I need to really research the history behind it, but I guess there was like some kind of act that happened here that made it easier for people to come over. But that's what my mom said, but then my mom also tells me the story of her crossing the river. So then it's like, if things were legal, then why did... So they came over and moved to Chicago because my grandpa and my uncles were there. And then had my brother, moved to LA, had my sister and I. And then I was 8 weeks old, and they drove from LA to Kansas City. It has always been pretty diverse. And that was like a lesson in itself. We just never thought anyone was weird or strange, or like no one was ever like bullied for their cultural differences because we were so used to it. It was cool to grow up in a place where like people knew a bunch of different languages, and it was just like, okay, you know, people had accents, and it was just like no big deal at all. Like now that I'm an adult, or like in my teenage years, nothing fazed me as far as like cultural differences. It was just like, that is so dope. Like, that's cool. Okay, like you're my friend, you know? It's why my husband and I chose now to like stay near like where we are now. Like, you know, we bought a house, and the diversity is really what like keeps us. But to give context to like then what the rest of our lives was like. So my mom was like the best mom. She is deaf, or hard of hearing. So she has a hearing aid so she can hear and communicate now. But she was disabled, or is disabled. So it made for a different kind of childhood for me because my mom can't speak Spanish well. She can't read and write in Spanish either. And then it limited her from being able to learn English. I remember as a kid, like, I would get, like, a lesson at school, and I'd come home and be like, Mom, like, let me show you, you know, and I would try to show her, and, like, just, you know, like, I hate the word couldn't, but she really, like, couldn't learn a lot of what I was trying to teach her. You know what? I really, like, school told you, like, everyone can. And school is like, if you try hard enough, you can do it. And so I was like, yeah, you know, maybe, like, my mom's teachers just weren't, like, good teachers, or, like, her school wasn't a good school. My parents dropped out in 6th grade to work for their family in Mexico. And so I was like, well, maybe, like, she just didn't get the opportunity, you know? And so I think it was that combined with, like, I was getting so good at it that I was like, oh, I could teach this, you know? I was the first in my family to graduate high school. And so I had all these decisions to make that no one in my family had made. And one of them was where to go to college. And it just seems so big to move away to college. So I really was like, I don't know that I want to do that. And then by the time it came around, my parents were separated and had been separated for 2 years, but were still living together because my mom didn't have anywhere else to go. I guess I won't say that. Things were complicated. And so when I graduated high school, was like, I'm gonna get my own apartment. I'm gonna live the college life, right? Like, I just couldn't do that to my mom and my little brother. My little brother's 8 or 9 years younger than me, and it was a super toxic household. And so I was like, okay. So I moved into an apartment, and I moved my mom and my little brother in with me. Yeah. So then college became this whole different experience because now I was financially supporting my mom and my little brother and running a household and like learning all the things about apartments and rent and contracts and writing a check on top of being the first in college. So I worked 40 hours, and then I took 18 credit hours every semester. Yeah, because my scholarship program, the IUE, you take your regular classes and then they add on 2 or 3 in order to give you like that urban, like supplemental stuff. And so I was really busy. Yeah. It was hard. I mean, it was like learning college is hard for absolutely everyone. Doesn't matter if you're 5th generation college. Like learning how to study, learning how to take notes, all of that was hard. On top of working and like being a guardian to like a little person. And then my mom, like, I mean, ever since I was little, it was like setting up her doctor's appointments, and she was undocumented at the time. So just like getting her access to things was a struggle. So you can petition for your parent to get their citizenship when you're 21. So we lived 3 years together, her being undocumented. And so when that time came around, like adding that on top of everything, like the immigration process is really difficult and intimidating. And so here I am, 21. Like the week of my 21st birthday, we like make the appointment with the lawyer. Like partying and all of that was like, I was doing it. I was partying, of course, but like my first instinct was like, let's get that appointment with the lawyer. And so we did, and that added on so much stress because it's so scary. Like really the immigration process is scary. So sitting in a room at the Homeland Security office, you kind of know that technically they could arrest her, right? Because she's undocumented in one of their buildings. And so the whole time you're like on edge. So like this really intense like interaction back and forth, and they're like, then like ask me like, what do you know? Just really intimidating. And this is like after like a 20-minute like intense like sweating, like what the hell, you know? So add on that to everything. And like, I mean, just to be honest, like raising my little brother, you know, getting him Medicaid, getting food stamps because we needed to like feed him, you know, just trying to like supplement what we didn't have, because my dad wasn't around and my mom didn't have access, you know. Yeah. So I was like, I want you to have everything that you want to have. I mean, it was some of my first experiences as a teacher. Like I was super excited about having him. When my mom told me, they were not excited at all. But I was like so excited about being a big sister. Yeah, I was the youngest for so long. And so I couldn't wait to have a little brother. It's like, I'm going to teach him this, I'm going to teach him that. So from the time he was born, like I taught him to walk, I potty trained him. So my first experiences as a teacher, you know, was with my mom and then with my little brother when he was born. So that was kind of cool. And so when I went into my student teaching, I very much was like, what do you need me to do? Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I won't mention this. I won't say this, I won't say that. Knowing in the back of my mind that the reason why I had gotten into teaching was because of the inequities I saw. So that fire that was in me in high school, I felt like I had to like put water on it. So then what ended up happening is that through my teaching, as that fire came back, because like, can you really ever get rid of that fire? No. It's passion, right? As that passion came back in my second year and my third year teaching, I was like, hold up, like, where did I go? And when did this become, like, I started to feel like, I don't know that anyone purposefully or even accidentally was doing this, but like a maid or like second class, like a runner, you know? And the reason, I started to feel that way partly because I was doing so much extra because of the kind of person I am, like interpreting and translating documents and going to kids' houses and all things that I really am very willing to do, but then not getting appreciated for it, or like it not resonating with anyone, that I was burning myself out. I think just like that fire and that passion of seeing like little microaggressions happening, not just toward me, but toward my kids' families, little comments, and then I was like, I have totally become like, I felt like I had become complicit to a system. It's no one's fault, it's no one's personal fault. It's just the way that the system works. Dr. Erica Hernandez Scott, one of my professors in UMKC, who's amazing, she always said, ask yourself, is this what's best for kids? Like, don't take it personal. Don't go and argue with your principal because of something you feel or something you think or something you want. Like, is this what's best for kids? And so when I would do things and I would get pushback and I would ask myself, is this what's best for kids? And then the answer was yes. And then I was getting pushback for it. I was like, I don't get it. Like, are we on the same team? Like, are we working toward the same goal? And so that led me to, well, actually the LEC like happened to me. I saw Edgar. I had kind of like known Edgar a little bit back in the day, or like met him. And then I saw him at Amplify, and I was like being like, saying something that caught his attention. He was like, hey, do you know about the LEC? Like, so he asked me to be on the board after like learning more about me. He and the LEC happened to me at the right time because I was really, really feeling burnt out. I think there is some element of the system that, of any large system like that in our country, that requires that complacency. So I do think that even people who aren't people of color, like, we get thrown onto us curriculum and textbooks and like a list of books you can't use and the way to teach math and like all these things that get thrown on us even when we know they're not best for kids. And so I do think there are elements of the system that happen to all of us, all teachers, all administrators. But on top of that, having to just be a different person culturally. Schools have been predominantly white educators forever, right, in our country's history. And so working in a system that wasn't designed for us. Like, Latinx people of color weren't allowed to be educated 100 years ago, 150 years ago here in our country. And that's when our school system was built, and not enough has changed since then. So I had what's considered radical, like, ideas for school and for students. I have what's considered radical ideas for schools and students that I think the system feels not ready for, because like, a part of our system wants to keep tradition, but we've had statistics for so long about how kids of color, it's not working for them. And really, it's not working for kids in general in a lot of places. Unfortunately, I feel like much of the heritage months, or like you say, history months, are performative. And, largely white organizations or institutions feel like it's their, like, the badge of honor for that, like, for the year is for me to recognize this and put it on our Instagram and put flyers around our office or whatever that is, right? And so I don't know that there's much impact for, like, white dominant spaces this month. I think, at least for my opinion and what I've seen, I think the impact is greater for us as Latinos, because it gives us the opportunity to sit back and just be like, yeah, like, recognize our ancestors' work and recognize the impact of our families, our immigrant family members, because all year we're hustling and we're working really, really hard. And so this month, if that means to slow down and just really recognize the men and the women who have, like, worked really hard, sacrificed their lives really to get us here, that's really impactful for us. I don't know what the impact is. I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't know what the impact is for white dominant spaces. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like, I've never, like, I guess, asked. But I know that in a lot of schools, it's just the flyers, you know, and then maybe, like, adding in books, which is great, you know, having that representation and that access. But what keeps us from doing that all the time, you know? It does, like, it costs absolutely nothing for Sandra Cisneros' books to be read in March and to be read in December, you know? What keeps us from doing that? I think that's the great thing about it, is that maybe it reminds people of our humanity and of our existence, because that often happens to people of color. Our humanity is erased because we were kind of put into this box of what we are for this country. So in the last 2 years, I've started to get more in touch with who I am. And that, I think, came along with my experience as a teacher, because I started to realize that I was being complicit to the system and changing the way I talk, the way I dress, the way I presented myself. And that fire came back, and I was like, no, like, that's not who I am. Let's, like, reimagine who I am again, thinking about the men, the women, the kids that really went through hell and high water to literally to have Susana be here and have access to education, have access to bilingualism, have access to college, teaching, you know, all the things. That's what has made me proud of who I am, because I think about my ancestors, and I think about how upset I think they would be if I settled, knowing what they struggled with. And my ancestors also being my parents, right? Like, them immigrating here to a country where they didn't know the language, they didn't know the culture, they still to this day are adjusting to the culture and society. For me to, like, lay down and die, or, like, lay down and just be complicit, would be an injustice to them. And so that's what being unapologetically Latinx means to me now. When you live your life for everyone else for so long, and then, you know, make this really huge decision for yourself, right? And for your family, for my husband and I, for us to make that decision together, it meant a lot. And I knew that I wanted to be a mom, like, forever. But I saw the struggles of my mom. Many people in my immediate circle were teen parents. So I saw those struggles. And so I, like, warded it off forever, knowing that I wanted it one day. So it was like, when's the right time? You know, okay, like, I'll go get my bachelor's and then we'll have kids. And then I was only, like, 22, and I was like, not ready. And then I went and got my master's. Then I was, like, 25. I was like, not ready. So it was like, it kept getting pushed back. But to now be in a place where I feel like I'm willing to sacrifice my, just literally, I know there's, like, negative connotations to this, but sacrifice my being for him. It's beautiful to be at that point in my life where absolutely everything I have going on right now could take a pause if I wanted to, in order to focus on him. And will, right? Yeah. I've learned that now since being pregnant. Like, I'm usually, like, a planner and, like, in control of a lot. And it's been like, oh, you know, like, we have morning sickness or an appointment or, like, all these things, like, so I can't just do whatever I want anymore. What I hope for him is that I hope, my husband and I had this conversation the other day, actually, and I just hope that he can be happy. I know that just sounds so silly because, that's, the smallest thing ever, but my husband and I talked about how so many people that we know, including ourselves, had to recover or work through or heal through XYZ, whether it's your childhood or some kind of trauma, immigrating to a new country, all the things that people in our community have to heal from, which isn't always a bad thing, but we hope that our son can be legitimately happy and legitimately fulfilled. I hope that he's strong, and as much as people tell me I'm strong, I hope he's stronger than me. I hope he's strong enough to be who he is and proud of who he is. I want him to be in touch with our ancestry and know how it is that he is where he is at, because a lot of people sacrificed a lot in order for him to be where he is, just like for me. His life will be different than mine, and so that's what we're working on thinking through, because he will have a lot of privileges that my husband and I didn't have. Hopefully always being in a 2-parent household and having parents who had access to college and had access to bilingualism, all these things. So how will we keep him humble and down to earth, with everything, with also being willing to give him everything he wants and needs. I want him to do anything he wants, and be happy doing it. Not like my parents were really forced into labor and working. My grandparents were the same way. I'm sure my great-grandparents, and for my parents and grandparents working through poverty and lack of access to medical care, all those things that my son hopefully won't ever have to struggle with. So, son, what are you going to do with the access to all of that in order to supersede what I've done, what anyone could even imagine?